Hello and welcome to Pathways. I am your host, Amber Stitt. And today we welcome my friend and colleague, Kate Beck, to the show today. Welcome, Kate.
Thanks, Amber. Happy to be here.
Glad we got to podcast again. It's been a little bit of time, but I think that's where I met you originally, was at a conference. I think that was the original. I loved your story and I want to dive into it more today. And you are a business owner. You're also in the insurance industry, which we'll talk about, an advocate and speaker for financial services and beyond. So let's talk a little bit about you. Let the audience know a little bit about you, Kate, before we get into the juicy parts of the topic of the day for our show.
Terrific. Thanks, Amber. Well, you nailed it. I am a business owner in Oregon, and I serve on the Women Insurance and Financial Services Board for WIFS Portland Metro. We met at a conference in Arizona. Love Arizona. The warm weather hugged me the whole time. Loved it.
Besides the air conditioning in that conference was pretty gnarly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I own my own insurance agency, PDX Insurance and Associates, and I advocate for people who are transitioning to Medicare for the first time and all the good things that go along with it.
It's not easy. That's not an easy job. There's a lot of confusion that comes with that.
There is. And thankfully, we have compliance that outlines pretty duplicatable processes. So we can narrow it down to be like, okay, what county do you live in? Who's your primary care doctor? If you don't have one, what system is your favorite one that supports you with your health needs? And then pick a plan.
Well, I'm glad that we have experts in that arena. That's certainly something that I have not done. So I'm glad that we have experts like you out there. Now, were you always considering being in this industry, in the insurance industry, specifically Medicare? Let's walk back in time. You're a business owner with your own agency. Were you saying, yes, I'm going to do this? Was it that dream job for you?
Not at all. In fact, I would say I literally came kicking and screaming. Like, imagine a wet cat. I did not want to get my insurance license. I had a different idea of what I wanted to do. So I laid out this big plan of all these things that I was going to check off one at a time. And then I wanted to do those things by the age of 30. And by the age of 30, I did all of the things on my list.
You did? Because yes, I know you travel a ton and I get a little jealous about some of the places that you go. So do you mind talking about some of these bucket list check marks?
Sure. I had a list of things that I wanted to do before the age of 30. Buy my own house, ski mountaintops in Jackson, Taos, British Columbia, and Switzerland, live on a private island, develop a castle into a bed and breakfast, and make wine, as well as pair food and beverage. All of those things I wanted to do. And there wasn't really a career path for me to do that in the 90s when I was attempting. So I went out and paved my own road and did all those things. And on my 30th birthday, I was living in the Turks and Caicos on a private island as an assistant food and beverage director. I get this call from my mom. And she's like, are you ready to get your insurance license?
What? Hold on while I apply my sunscreen. I got things to do.
I know. I'm like literally pairing food and wine, and our island had a private airport. It was so much fun, but the timing was perfect because it was right before 2008. And we all know what happened in 2008. The market crashed. So it was the perfect opportunity to transition to a field that was necessary. And I could use my compassionate sales and stewardship from food and beverage in the luxury travel industry and apply it to literally one of the most boring topics on the planet, which is Medicare. And it's necessary. And I actually love it. So I try to find ways to make it interesting as well as stay in compliance, number one.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe where we can have some soul sisterhood in the fact that I love disability insurance and nobody wants to do that, disability insurance, like, whoa. Yeah. So I'm glad that we can make it fun. And so you get your insurance license. Mom kind of pulled you back into the hometown. Is that what happened then? Oof. That's interesting. So if we grow up in the business, we might not want to be in it, but then you realize it's a pretty cool place to be. So did you always have confidence in did you just go and start your own business? Was it just natural or did you work for somebody first? How did this happen for you?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Amber. I would say one of the biggest hurdles that I had was coming from an industry where I was an expert to a new industry without really having a plan. And I worked for someone. I actually made a lot of mistakes, and it also affected my confidence in a negative manner. So one of the biggest hurdles I would say is lack of self-advocacy and confidence that happens over time. Even if you start out as a naturally confident person, you can lose confidence due to situations or scenarios that affect you negatively.
That's interesting. Do you mind if we pause there? Because you're a joyful person. I feel that you're joyful. I've never seen you. I feel like there's just like an energy, and we might come off confident. And then are you saying that they squashed it a bit and you let it potentially be that way? Because sometimes we just second guess ourselves and what we bring to the table. Don't downplay that. So that was happening a bit is what I'm hearing.
Yes, I worked for a firm for 6 years that just didn't deliver on their promises. And I would be given a list of things to do. I would do all of the things on that list. And then at the end, it was this carrot that was dangled, and then the carrot wouldn't be delivered. Then the list would get longer and the carrot was there. And it just kept being this cycle. And the more that I kept finishing these goals and not getting the rewards that were verbally promised to me, but not in writing, the more defeated and scared. I would say at the beginning, I was this confident, wild Mustang. And at the end of that tenure, I was like a piddling little puppy, just so sad and discouraged. And I just felt like worthless.
I appreciate you saying that. The point of pathways with the podcast was really that I came in a different pathway and I'm really good at what I do and I have a successful business. But you can see where sometimes we have to go on these roads and these journeys, and sometimes the obstacles push us into more success. But I think it's really important for you to share that that has happened, and our stories are so important. And I know that you do a lot of speaking out there, whether it's in financial services or through coaching and consulting. We need to tell our stories because you never know how that can affect others. And I think that's really where you've developed really being comfortable with conflict is what you call it. And that's really what I wanted to talk with you about today. But it happened to you and you overcame it. And I think is your message to help others see the same for them in any industry.
Absolutely. My message is to say, hey, look, it's good to have a check-in and say, where am I today? Is this where I want to be? What about next year? Am I keeping the same? Am I improving? Am I taking it down? But having an accountability, whether that's a friend, a colleague, or you hire a coach in any of those circumstances to say, okay, am I experiencing any negative feelings? All right. In any way, professionally or personally. And if I am, let's talk about it. Let's use this process to kind of get to know them a little bit better, because it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world if you let it go too long. My mistake is I let it go on just a little too long. I should have cut the cord sooner. But if you're feeling these negative feelings, then find a way to unpack it, get comfortable addressing it, and enjoy the process of conflict because it drives great conversation.
I mean, I suppose that's where when we originally podcasted for the Counting on Her podcast, we were talking about some of that. And we might go through different seasons too, but if we don't have fellowship with others to know that some of this is going on in their lives too, and it's really important to share that. And I've noticed, and you and I have some similar friends between the WFS chapters, but then other colleagues, 2024 to me, because I'm sitting outside this bubble at this point of time for myself, I'm listening to a lot of what's happening in the industry. And a lot of people I think are going through checking off the list, and they're high performers, achievers. They're doing the tasks, they're hitting their goals, and promises are not being made. And a lot of these companies, corporations, broker dealers, RIAs, there's a lot going on right now. And I know that you and I might be on the sidelines with our own businesses hearing it. We're feeling it, that our friends and colleagues, there's a lot going on there. So let's talk about some of the strategies to help identify if it's going on with you. What should we be doing, Kate?
Well, step one is, why do I want this? Like, what is it, this thing that you want, right? Well, I guess step one would be, what is my position? Understand my position, even if it's that I don't know what I want, but here's my position. Let's use this
example. Real.
Yeah, getting real of my position is I was given a list of things to do. I checked them off. And am I happy with the personal or professional compensation that I received? Yes or no, right? And if that answer is no, and I have some negative feelings showing up, let's process that. Let's see what our position is.
Love that. Are there any tools that you've used along the way, whether it's books, assessments? Is there anything that just helped you maybe when you weren't super clear to help you get some clarity?
Absolutely. I really love Shirzad Shamin's Positive Intelligence program. And I actually got certified to be one of his facilitating coaches. And that's based on that, how I created this Getting Comfortable with Conflict guide, because it's available to anyone who needs it. And there's a free assessment. You can go on Positive Intelligence pdxins.com and do this little saboteur assessment. If you feel like you're feeling this thing that you feel, but you don't know how to put words to describe it, it helps unlock really what are these negative feelings and potentially what sabotaging voices are we hearing? And then you kind of have a direction of, okay, which one area do I really want to bring them down? Basically, saboteurs are sometimes an overuse of our gifts. So we all have these gifts and talents. And sometimes imagine we're a pleaser and we want to please people because we want others to be happy, but we also want ourselves to be happy. If we then keep giving without filling in our own cup, we can start feeling a little bit resentful or angry or like blowing up in the sense that, well, I gave this, but I didn't receive this. And then now it's something that would have been a blessing has now turned into not a blessing.
Unnecessary stress. So you're really diving in on this and saying, almost like putting guardrails on yourself to not have a blind spot there and pay attention to that. There's the good and then not overuse, sounds like.
Yeah. And really getting clarity about what our values and what's important to us, because having a positive attitude doesn't mean, oh, I'm so happy today. It means that you wake up in a balanced sense of space and that when someone brings a difficult situation to you, you can listen to understand.
Yeah.
And come up with, am I the right person to help you or is there someone else that would be a better service? But understanding what the biggest concerns and fears are around this position we have is a great first starting place before we navigate our negative feelings.
It's good. Identifying. And everyone's going to have them, right?
We do. We can use this process for, okay, maybe you want to go to one place for dinner and your spouse wants to go somewhere else for dinner. You could go through this basic process to be like, okay, we can come up with what is it that we really want. What it turns out after doing the process, maybe you want a courtyard with flowers and what they wanted was fresh seafood or organic vegetables. And so then instead of worried that it has to be this place or that place, you can come to a happy median.
If we could just do more of that in the planning with money, would we have more success in our relationships, perhaps?
Yes, it's the same with planning for money too, though. It works in these really just getting to the core of what is the root issue. And sometimes it's not the first thing that you say. Sometimes it's taking the time to explore it, navigate the feelings, and then looking from the other perspective. So maybe one spouse wants X insurance or financial vehicle, and the other spouse has a different financial. You could do the same thing and get through, obviously to have a conversation with your financial advisor. I'm not offering any advice here.
Disclosure. We are not giving advice today, but get real with yourself and your partner. No, that's the advice. Be okay with it, but we're all going to come from different places.
Well, you don't have to do all the steps. So step 3 would be empathizing. Step 4 is an innovation. And then step 5 is activate, meaning what one action would I need to figure this out? And this tool has come in really handy for people who are actually working for health carriers, who are offered jobs that maybe, so let me think about a situation here. Okay. I'm going to give you an example, a case study. So I had a dear friend of mine, 2 dear friends, each are different. Both went through the program. One of them worked for a company and had someone that she wanted to date, but kept having something get in the way. And she couldn't quite put her finger on why it was getting in the way. They both worked for the same company. So the main reason is she didn't want to date someone that she worked with. And she was a higher up person at this said company. Well, eventually, after going through the program, she got to understand that her controller and her hypervigilance were getting in the way of her personal development and actually giving someone the permission to be more than friends. And in this particular case, they ended up going out on their date, getting married, and now she's moved out of state, getting a promotion with this company. Both are higher ups in this company, and everything worked out great.
Wow.
The other case study is a person who worked for a different company where she was killing it in her role, number 1 in the state, but feeling like just dissatisfied with her situation. So we went through the steps and really got down to the bottom of what was important to her. And she wanted to move out of state. And after doing these steps, she was able to really clearly identify what it would take for her to move out of state and work for the same company and make more money. And it worked out for her. She ended up negotiating what she wanted and just asking for it because she was really clear about what her values were. And I think that's what it comes down to. If we're clear about our values and what it is that we want and what it is we don't want, it's amazing how easy things come when you ask for them in a nice way.
I know you talk about getting comfortable with tough conversations. So that's part of this is advocating for yourself. Maybe you're negotiating something, but any tips that have helped you through tough conversations?
Absolutely. Scheduling breaks for myself. And I say that personally because I used to book myself back to back to back to back without any minutes in between. And I'm mentioning that because I know that you yourself have to do this too.
What? Me? I would never do that. Did I tell you about my afternoon? Don't use that against me, Kate. I'm not supposed to tell anybody.
The more I work on my personal development, the stronger I show up at work with my colleagues, in my volunteer efforts, and with my family. So the more clear I become with my own personal boundaries, the easier it is for me to say, heck yes, or heck no.
Yeah.
Because we want to do things that are like, yes, I definitely want to do that. That sounds awesome. And if you're feeling like, nah, well, maybe that's not something you want to do. And it's okay to say that too. It's okay to let someone else who will shine in that position do that thing you don't want to do. Yeah. And that's the part where control gets in the way, where we think we're the only one that can do all of the things, and we're not.
You've mentioned that, I think, twice in different ways, where it is okay to not be everything to everybody.
Yeah.
You talked about it a few minutes back, and then you're mentioning it again. There's a little bit of delegation that can be helpful too in a business sense for scaling. But if something's not bringing you joy, you don't need the kudos for every single thing. You need to be doing things that bring you joy. And so you've done that in your younger life, like I'm 30, I've done all these things, but you're continuing to push that into your professional. You were always business professional, but into business entrepreneurship and your advocacy for nonprofit work as well. So really, when we're talking about really delegating and staying within that flow of what you love to do, you talk about bringing solutions and making it work for everybody. Is there some tips or tools to help bring, whether it's a team, a partnership, nonprofit board? Are there things that you implement that you are continuing to evolve into your practices?
Absolutely. In fact, this leads right into a project here in Portland Metro WIFS that we're near and dear to all of our hearts with Women Insurance and Financial Services, and it's Project 36. So we are trying to get out there and meet two demographics of women. We're trying to meet women who are graduating from college and women who have changed their career, like you and me, or before they change their career, to let them know that there is a support out there to help navigate the way. And through my experience, what I understand personally and professionally is having a system. So it's one thing to just say, okay, I'm just going to go send out a bunch of emails to people who might be helpful. Or we could do it in a systematic way where we say, let's have a strategic meeting where we figure out who's good at what, use services that are already together on a Google Drive. Thanks, Alana, and Christy and all the people who put together this Google Drive, and shout out. Yes. And then make a list of these people before we reach out to them, so that we have a process of, we're making a list, we're reaching out to them, we're asking them to respond with an action by a certain date. And we have a designated person to follow up and see, how is that going? Is there interest? Is there not interest? And little things like this. So I guess this is not natural to many people to understand and see clearly how to systematically put together an event. For some reason, it is one of my God-given talents since I was a very young child. Like promotions, events, like they come naturally to me. And I love to share those tips and tricks with people so that it helps them level up as well. And it's exciting for me too. I don't have to be the only person. Like, that's what I learned. The big takeaway is, earlier you're like about delegation. I used to, before I found and created getting comfortable with conflict, one of the biggest problems I had to overcome is that I didn't have to say yes to everything, and I didn't have to do it all. I could say, okay, we have to slow down before we speed up. And when we do, we use less time getting that same thing done because we've divided it by everyone else's strengths, and we recognize our weakness so that we can team up with someone whose our weakness is their strength.
Yeah. And I recently had that aha moment with, a couple colleagues that was Helen and Chris were like, let me help with that. Really? Wonderful. And Ask for it. See if there's anybody else that would enjoy some of the tasks, because there probably is somebody. And I like how your previous life before the insurance business, you were in more of a hospitality event, like a luxury line of where you were working previously. So I just want to challenge people that might be good at something in one realm that might then pop itself up into like the next, transition, that season for yourself. So back to Project 36 and maybe the career changers that, you and I could talk about that. We both did that in our 30s. Sometimes something might pop up from your previous life and be super useful in your current world. And it doesn't mean like you have to know everything at all times, but trying to get clarity in those seasons is super helpful. But we also need our community to help us too.
And we're so lucky to have this community because people don't know about it. I wish I had this community back when I was getting my insurance license, and it would have probably saved me a decade of mistakes. Then again, I wouldn't have the wisdom. So there is that.
We wouldn't be here talking.
Right. We wouldn't be here talking, but
we're fast tracking for everybody else. We're going to help you be more efficient.
Yes, and have fun. So what I love, Amber, about what you just mentioned is a lot of those same skills that you might have that you love in whatever it is, whether it's a stay-at-home mom, or maybe you're a teacher, or maybe you're in administration. To me, the big barrier is the time of day that I want to work and how much money do I make? I mean, and what I love about the WFS organization is that accountability of, okay, I want to do all of these things, but who's checking to see when I'm self-employed and I work for myself? Who's saying, Kate, did you meet your financial goals? Did you make the money that you wanted to make? And if not, why not? I remember when I first joined, I just thought that $70,000 seemed to be, a light year away. It just felt so far away. I thought, I just didn't know. That's just the beginning.
And then you meet people, they're talking about their income and you're like, oh, what? And then you learn some people are making certain levels. You're like, well, I want that too. So let's talk about it. Let's find out how.
Let's find out what can I do differently, or how can I collaborate and make that happen?
Yeah.
I think the balance of having health, wealth, love, and happiness, really and truly, regardless of whatever path you're on. And it might sound like, yes, we are in the insurance industry, but it's really important. We're in the human industry. And the better we understand ourselves and the more personal development we do, and even if you do personal development last year, this year, next year, annually, it doesn't have to be the same thing.
Right.
Getting clear on your values and being open to the fact that they change over time, and creating an accountability situation, whether that's a colleague, a friend, someone you pay to listen to.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to pay for that expert, that third party.
But you yourself are accountable to live the life that you love. And if you're unhappy, there are lots of opportunities to do something about it. If I could just say from the rooftops, cultivating confidence by planting seeds of peace.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with moving our bodies and getting our annual health exams, right? Making sure that we have a savings practice and getting a financial planner to say, hey, look, you know what? I need a date on my calendar to review these things annually. And even if my account is at the top of your things, I still want that check-in to make sure I'm saving as much as possible for my future. And funding my disability policy, all of these things that we do, how do we hold ourselves and each other accountable?
Is there anything, Kate, that you've rolled out this year in 24 that's like a new process, something you're implementing, or even like a word that just sets the tone for the year? And this is a trick question because you might not, but I bet you have something. You said something about peace and like there's something cool.
Cultivating confidence by planting seeds of peace.
Yes. What does that mean to you?
That is my inner mantra that I repeat to myself, because I think about when I was at my darkest, scariest times of unknown, like leaving the comfort of luxury travel, like going on private planes and living this incredible life and transitioning to the beginning stages of making like 200 calls of cold calls a day. Yep. And just agony of knowing that it's worth something, and cultivating confidence by planting seeds of peace. And what that means to me is having strategic action steps and things that I commit to taking, understanding what my inner critic might say. So sometimes we create this big plan. Okay, I'm going to buy a new car. I'm going to buy a disability policy. I'm going to maximize the cash value of my, in my life insurance. But what is my inner critic? How can I anticipate the worst case scenario of what my inner critic will say? You can't do that. You're not worth it. You don't have a college degree. whatever that inner critic will say, get used to it. Get comfortable with those words and say, hey, look, I hear you. I see what you're saying. And even though my body might feel tense in the shoulders, I already anticipated this. So my
control there.
Yes. I understand the worst case scenario. I understand that feeling where it shows up in my body. And my peaceful response will be, you've got this, girl. Cultivating confidence by planting seeds of peace. The other thing that we're really saying in our chapter for the Portland Metro is map to success, mentor, advocate, promote. And we're doing that by cultivating confidence and planting seeds of peace.
I love that. So I know that you work with teams. Isn't there a process you do implement with certain teams? If people work with you from a consulting perspective, you have a process that can kind of hone in on that. Can you share with us how people can find you and work with you?
Absolutely. And in the comments below, we're going to include an active campaign link where you can click on the link, enter your name and your email, and this guide, Getting Comfortable with Conflict, will come right to you in your inbox. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram at PDXINS or on LinkedIn at PDXINS or Kate Beck, either or you'll find me. And then my email is super easy. It's info, like you're looking for information, at pdxins.com.
Awesome. Well, I always love hanging out with you and seeing you, even though we don't even live that close, but I feel like every time we do virtually, hopefully maybe we'll see each other later this year. But it's always great to just hear what you're doing and how you're working through some of the challenges in life. So I picked up a ton of takeaways. Can't wait to learn more about it from checking out that link. And I really appreciate you being here today, Kate.
Thanks, Amber. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Pathways. For more information about the podcast, books, articles, the blog, and so much more, please visit my website at amberstitt.com. And remember, let's take action today. Thank you for listening.